You are crushing it. Welcome to Chapter 3, the overview of economics. This chapter is basically the foundation of upcoming chapters. Super important one. Because you will learn about the definition of economy and different terms related to it, like inflation rate, GDP, interest rate, business cycle, supply and demand, unemployment rate, labor force, monetary policy, fiscal policy, and lots of other new terms. I am super excited for this chapter. This chapter starts on page 89 of your PDF textbook and ends on page 142, totaling of 53 pages. We're going to cover everything ins and outs in only 17 slides. I should have, no, not only in 17 slides, because 17 is a lot. But it's one of the good chapters. I am super interested about it. Okay, let's get to it. There is math and formula involved, but it's not of a calculation, it's more of a conceptual. So the question would play with the factors in the formula, it won't ask you to calculate anything with the formula. So relax. The most important thing about Chapter 3 is you're going to see only 4 questions on your final test from Chapter 3. As I said before, it's more of a foundational chapter. So, we need to take it seriously, and I am ready. You need to be ready. We will destroy this chapter together. Ready? 3, 2, 1, let's go. Economy. This chapter, I need to confess that this chapter is not just designed for you. I think every individual out there that is living need to read this chapter 3 of IFC textbook one time, at least one time, because we're going to talk about economy. Okay, we need to understand some important terms in order to have a better financial perspective in our life. This chapter is related to economy. What is economy? In simple words, economy is understanding production and consumption of goods and services and any money-wise interactions between individuals, businesses, and government. Okay? So, every single activity, financial activity that we have, as simple as buying a milk, okay? When you buy a milk, you're paying tax to the government, okay? Also, the store is profiting from you, okay? The store pays bills. The store pays their employees and pays taxes to the government. All of these single micro interactions affect our economy as a whole. So that's why we're saying that economy, like understanding economy, is vital for any mutual fund sales rep like you. Now, there are 2 perspectives to economy. There are 2 terms: microeconomics and macroeconomics. What is microeconomics? Microeconomics means zooming in on society, like zooming in and focusing on decisions that individuals and firms make. So, micro, as its name presents, focusing on detail, zooming in, every single interaction that an individual has with firms and businesses, like buying a milk. This is focusing on, like zooming in on society. Okay? And instead, on the other hand, macroeconomics is zooming out of the society, and focusing on results of the decisions that those individuals and businesses make. Okay. Now, let's have an example. Okay, about microeconomics. Some concerns and some questions are answered, are expertise of microeconomics. Like what? Like how prices are determined. This is under microeconomics. Or individuals' decision on how much of various goods to purchase. Or firms decide how many workers to hire. These are all under micromanagement, like microeconomics. Okay? For macroeconomics, the questions and concerns are broader, like zooming out. Examples of questions are how to manage unemployment, inflation. Why did total output shrink last quarter? Okay. How can a nation improve its standard of living? These are the concerns that macroeconomics face with. Great. We had a definition of economy, and now we know two perspectives to this term economy: microeconomics and macroeconomics, and we know the concerns that they address. Let's get to the question. Again, this is my favorite part. Please pause the video, as always, and read the question yourself first. So, what type of question you may get from this slide? Which one of the following questions is in the expertise area of microeconomics? A, how do minimum wage laws affect the supply of labor? B, how can a nation improve its standard of living? C, will a decrease in interest rates stimulate economic growth? And D, why did total output shrink last quarter? The right answer is A. A is concern of microeconomics, and the other three is expertise area of macroeconomics. Great. Let's get to the next slide. Supply and demand. These two terms are one of the most important terms that you need to fully understand. Whatever you purchase out there, okay? Whatever you purchase out there, the price of that item is determined by supply and demand. The price paid for any product is largely determined by the demand for and supply of that product in the marketplace. Look at the figure on the right side, okay? The horizontal line or arrow is quantity, and the vertical one is price. And the red line is supply. The blue line is demand. Okay. Look at the quantity 0. Look at the start of the demand line, okay? Quantity is 0 and price is more than 3K. What does it mean? It means that when the prices are high, okay, let's say you're buying a phone, iPhone, whatever. If the Apple company, okay, set the iPhone price more than 3K, the demand is zero. Nobody's going to buy iPhone. Even though iPhone is a great phone, but nobody will pay that much for it. iPhone is like between 1,500 to 2K. Nobody would pay more than 3K for iPhone. So, but with the decrease, just again look at the demand, that blue line, okay? With the decrease of the price, so when it's with the decrease of the price, the quantity, the demand goes up. See, for example, with the when the price is 2K, just consider that iPhone example. When the price is 2K, the demand is 200. The quantity is 200. So 200 people are demanding, wants to buy that iPhone. And again, with the decreasing of the price, the quantity or demand is going up. And this has happened vice versa for supply. Okay? So, when the prices are up, factories just want to produce, manufacture stuff because they're selling for good. Okay? They just, so the supply or quantity supplied is high when prices are up. But when prices are, like, look at that red line, this when prices are below 1K in that figure, okay, factories or manufacturers wouldn't produce anything. The quantity, the supply, here now quantity is number of supplies, okay? In the previous example, the quantity was number of demand. So, when the prices are lower, the supply, factories are not eager to produce anything because it isn't worth it. So, these two, demand and supply, meet each other in a point called equilibrium point. Equilibrium point is a fair point that supply and demand are in balance. Great. There are two laws, law of demand and law of supply. What does law of demand say? It says that the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded, as I described in the figure, for the figure. And the law of supply says the higher the price of a good, the greater the quantity supplied. Awesome. Let's get to the question. What type of question you may get from this slide on your final test? Which one of the following statements are correct about laws of demand and supply? A, the higher the price, the higher the quantity demanded. B, the higher the price of a good, the greater the quantity supplied. C, the lower the price of a good, the greater the quantity supplied. And D, the lower the price, the lower the quantity demanded. So, this is a great question because it is playing with like lower, higher, goods, price, these terms, okay? You don't need to memorize this concept. Just absorb it, just understand it. This is, with that Apple example, iPhone example, just absorb the concept, okay? The right answer, we know that it's B, because the higher the price of good, factories are more introduced to produce. They are selling for more. They're like, oh, okay, let's produce more because we're selling for good. But there's no demand for it. People will be like, oh, no, I won't pay that much. So the right answer is B, the higher the price of a good, the greater the quantity supplied. Great, let's get to the next slide. Gross domestic product, or GDP. I think you have heard GDP term a lot in the news, especially financial news, like Canada's GDP has dropped or increased this much, this percentage last year. GDP, the term GDP represents the total value of goods and services produced within a country's borders. Okay? The term gross refers to the inclusion of all production. Okay? The term domestic indicates that it happens within the territory of the country. And the term product signifies that we're talking about goods and services. Okay? GDP is one simple number, percentage. It shows how the condition of economy is. The higher the GDP, the better the economy is. Okay? There are three approaches to calculate GDP. Number one, income approach. Number two, expenditure approach. And number three, production value added approach. We won't care about income and production value approaches because there are no that much detail in the textbook. And we're going to talk about expenditure here. But as a short description, income approach, the GDP using the income approach is the sum of all the income generated by this economic activity. Okay? And the GDP calculated on with the production value added approach calculates an industry or sector's output and subtracts the value of all goods and services used to produce that outputs. Now, let's get to expenditure approach. Formula here. GDP equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. What is C here? C is consumer spending. These little transactions, buying a milk, remember? These are consumer spending. So C is consumer spending. I, what is I? I is business spending plus investments. So I is business spending plus investments. G is government spendings. X minus M is net exports. So exports less imports of goods and services. These are all spendings. That's why it is called expenditure approach. Okay, you're not gonna get a question that give you some numbers and says, okay, calculate GDP. No, you're gonna get conceptual questions. I will show you what type of questions will you get in the future slides, like in a challenge. But they will play with this C, with I, with G, X, M, the lower, higher scenario, So you'll get conceptual questions with GDP. In a short terms, I can say GDP is a number that shows the health of the economy. The higher the GDP, the better the economy is. This is in simple terms. Let's get to the question. Which of the following best defines GDP? A, the total value of all goods and services produced within a country. B, the total value of all goods and services produced by a country's citizens, regardless of where they are located. C, the market value of all intermediate goods and services produced within a country. And D, the market value of all final goods and services produced within a country. The right answer is D. But why D? Because as we talked about it, because of the word's gross, because of the word gross, okay? The market value of all final goods and services produced within a country is the definition of GDP, okay? There's no net goods and services, all goods and services, so gross. So the right answer is D. Awesome, let's get to the next slide. Business cycle phases. This concept is super important. What is business cycle? Business cycle shows how GDP changes over time. Okay, so there it's a curve. In the horizontal arrow, we have time. In the vertical arrow, we have GDP. Okay, economy of country. So countries won't have just constant GDP every year. Okay, remember when COVID happened? All countries over the world just they were broke. There weren't any like sales. Lots of businesses got broke, go out of business. So GDP fluctuate. There are ups and downs with GDP. Health of the economy's health of each country varies. Okay, if again something like COVID happens, the GDP, as I said before, GDP is health of the economy. The GDP will drop and the economy will get weakened. So, but we have names. So when GDP changes over time, goes up, goes down, we have some phases here, okay? When GDP is in top, that phase is called peak. GDP is on peak, okay? Something like COVID happens, GDP drops, okay? Go to the minimum. That minimum is called trough. So peak to trough. Then now, like after 2 years of the COVID, the economy is getting better, okay? We're recovering. So this phase from trough to the previous peak is called recovery phase, okay? Then we're like at previous peak now, but the industry, the economy have a good health, so it is like continue increasing. It goes to a new peak, okay? That recovery to a new peak is called expansion. Country's economy is expanding, okay? So expansion is another phase, and so it goes down. It's not gonna continue increasing. It will come down again because the like very high GDP is not also favorite because it will cause inflation and lots of damages to the economy. So GDP will meet a new peak, but it will decrease for a reason. Maybe government do it like because it wants to control everything, inflation, interest rate, and everything. So that decrease called contraction. So we have peak, then contraction happens, it goes to trough, okay? Then recovery happens, then expansion happens. 5 different phases. But what do we see in peak phase, for example? What happens to economic factors when we are in peak phase cycle? In peak phase cycle, demands are greater than supply. Inflation goes up. Interest rate goes up. Stock and bond prices goes down. Business sales goes down. Labor and products goes down. Okay? So this scenarios happen when we are at peak. But why inflation and interest rate goes up? Okay, when GDP is high, it means people have money. Okay, there are lots of money, so people need to spend that money. The demand for a single item, for example, a house, the demand will rise up. Okay, so the price of that item will increase. Then inflation happens. When the price of an item goes up, it means inflation is happening. So that's why inflation will rise up when a peak is up. When inflation and interest rate have a direct relationship with each other. When inflation goes up, interest rates goes up to control that inflation. That's the scenarios in peak business cycle. But what happens in contraction business cycle? In contraction business cycle, so GDP is increasing, okay? In the contraction, GDP is increasing. GDP is decreasing. So bankruptcies will be more than startups, because now when GDP is decreasing, the health of the economy is not good. So bankruptcies are more. Then layoffs will be more. So businesses is not doing good. They will lay off their employees. Then production will decrease. Savings will increase, because we were at peak, interest rates were up. Now in the contraction, the interest rates are still up, but so people start saving. Saving will increase. Household income will decrease. And recession, and the thing about contraction. So when contraction happens for 2 sequences, it is called recession. So recession equals 2 multiplied by contraction. So if we see contraction for 2 business cycles, it means that country is in recession. Awesome. Now, we were on peak. Contraction happens. We're on trough now. What happens in trough? Supply is greater than demand. Okay? The health of economy is not good. Supply is more. Demand for that item is low. Okay? Inflation will decrease. Okay? Now, when the supply is more than demand and there is no demand for it, businesses will be like, okay, let's reduce the price because we're not selling items. Okay? People are not buying anything, so businesses won't increase the price. So inflation will be decreased. And as I said before, inflation and interest rates has a direct relationship with each other. So interest rate will decrease as well. Bonds and stock prices will rise. Remember, bond and interest rate has opposite goes to opposite direction. When interest rates decrease, bonds increase bonds price, and vice versa. Remember this. And then business sales will increase, because if the businesses won't increase the price, people will interested in buying. They will eventually, gradually will come to the market and buy stuff. So business sales will increase, and labor and production will increase as well. Now, to the recovery. We were on peak. Contraction happened. We are on trough. We're recovering. What happens in the recovery? House and car sales were increased. People are now interested in buying stuff. Okay, the economy is shaping now. Economy is getting better, to a good health. Inflation decreased, layoffs decreased, production increased, and these are the scenarios. These are the scenarios that will happen in recovery business cycle. And finally, in expansion, the health of economy is very good. Okay, so startups are greater than bankruptcy. Number of new startups will be increased because there are lots of money. Okay, and bankruptcy will be lower. Inflation is stable in expansion business cycle. Stock prices will go up. Business sales will go up because people have money. Okay, they will go and buy stuff. So business sales will go up, and labor and products will go up. Why? Because when you're selling more, business sales are up. When you're selling more, you can hire more people. You can produce more. Great. This is very, very important slide and topic. I guarantee you, no doubt, 100%, you're going to get question from this slide. But what type of question? Let's get to that. Which of the following is not a characteristics of an expansion business cycle? So you need to understand what happens in each business cycle. What happens to inflation rate, interest rates, number of business sales, layoffs. Okay, you need to analyze it. A, rising corporate profits. B, steady or falling unemployment rate. C, stock prices fall. And D, business investing in new capacity. As we talked about it, the right answer is C. In expansion, the stock prices will rise, not fall. So the other three are characteristics of expansion business cycle, and option C is not. Feel free to read that white text on the right, because it will basically give you an idea of what book says about business cycle and expansion, specifically about expansion. Let's get to the next slide. Economic indicators. Okay, we understand GDP. We know that GDP means health of economy. Okay, now, there is a term called economic indicators. What does those economic indicators do? Economic indicators predict or confirm business cycles. Okay, there are three types of economic indicators: leading, coincidence, and lagging. Leading economic indicators they move before the overall economy. Okay? What are the examples? Money supply is a leading economy indicator. Stock prices, manufacturers' new orders, average hours worked, and number of housing stops or housing starts. These are all leading economic indicators. Okay? When those examples, when those happens, okay, we can predict what will happen to the economy, what will happen to the GDP. Okay? For example, money supply is an example of leading economic indicator. When money supply increases, okay, what does that mean? It means government, okay, it means interest rate is low now. Government wants to give money with a low interest rate to people, so to activate the economy, okay? So we are in trough to recover the economy, okay? So leading indicators give us an idea of what will happen to the economy. Coincidence, economic indicators, on the other hand, they move at the same time with the whole economy. Examples: personal income, and GDP, industrial production, retail sales. Okay, when personal income is high, it means that they move at the same time. It means that when the health of economy is good, so personal income is high. Business have lots of money, want to give it to their employees. Okay, so these examples happen at the same time with the economy. And lagging economic indicators, they move after the overall economy. What are the examples? Unemployment rate. So, for example, we passed the expansion business cycle, okay? It will take time to affect unemployment rate. It will take 3 months, 6 months, a year to affect unemployment rate. Okay, so unemployment rate, inflation rate, labor cost, private sector spending, and interest on borrowing. These happen after the overall economy. These are lagging economic indicators. These confirm the business cycle. Okay, our business cycle were on, for example, expansion or on contraction. The changes in the examples that I provided in the lagging economic indicators, these confirm that yes, we were on, for example, contraction. They confirm the previous business cycle. Awesome. Now we know the economic indicators. What type of question you may get? This is also a very important topic. Which of the following is a lagging economic indicator? Very good question. A, average hours worked per week. B, manufacturers' new orders. C, unemployment. And D, retail sales. As we talked about it, unemployment rate is a lagging economic indicator. They confirm the previous business cycle. They say yes. Yes, this business cycle that we predicted was right. This happened. Awesome. Let's get to the next slide. Well, this chapter is super important because every slide is getting more interesting. Here, this slide is about labor market. What is labor market? There is a term called working age population. What does that term mean? Any individual who is greater or equal to 15 years old in Canada, 15 years old, is categorized as working age population. Now, that working age population has 3 subcategories. What are they? Number 1, those who are unable to work. Like what? Like people in psychiatric hospitals or prisons. People in prison, they cannot work. They are unable to work. They are also equal or greater than 15 years old, but unable to work. The second group or second subcategory is people who are not working by choice. So full-time students choose to not work for now. Homemakers, okay? Homemakers choose not to work. Discouraged workers choose not to work. Retirees, they choose not to work. These are under second group. And the third group of working age population are labor force. This labor force has again 2 subcategories. Number 1, people who are working, okay? Group number 2, people who are not working but actively looking for a job. This is super interesting. So, we had working age population. That working age population has 3 subcategories. Number 3 subcategory was labor force. That labor force itself had 2 subcategories of people who are working, and second group is people who are not working but actively looking for a job. Awesome. Now, why did we learn this working age population? To get to 2 most important formula about labor market. Formula number 1, participation rate. It is labor force, the third group of working age population, remember? 2, working age population, whoever equals or greater than 15 years old. This is called participation rate. The second term is the famous unemployment rate. I'm sure you have heard this term. So this is the people who are not working but actively looking for a job to labor force. Okay? This is how we calculate unemployment rate. There is a problem in unemployment rate. What's that problem? Can you guess what's that problem? The problem is unemployment rate do not consider discouraged workers. In the formula, it's just focused on that third group. But in the second group, we also have discouraged workers. For example, I'm now, I looked actively for a job. Now I'm discouraged because the income is low, because there's no job. I'm disappointed, frustrated, okay? I don't want to actively now look for a job. I just want to relax and lay down and I don't know. So those people are called discouraged workers. And unemployment rate, because they are also in working age population, but also not working, so the unemployment rate should include this group, but it's not. So that's the problem with unemployment rate formula and unemployment rate percentage out there. It does not consider discouraged workers. Awesome. Let's get to the question. Pause the video yourself and answer it first. Then we're going to do it together. What is the significance of the unemployment rate in the labor market? A, the number of people who are currently employed. B, the number of people who are not in the working age population. C, the share of the labor force that is unemployed and actively looking for work. And D, the number of people who are not interested in working. Yeah. The right answer is definitely C, because unemployment rate shows the share of the labor force that is unemployed and actively looking for work. And participation rate shows share of labor force in the working age population. Awesome. You're doing great. You're doing great. Let's get to the next slide. Types of unemployment. Okay. People are unemployed. There are reasons, and we can categorize this unemployment into 4 different groups: cyclical, seasonal, frictional, and structural. Let's get into details of these 4 types of unemployment. Cyclical. Cyclical unemployment is directly tied to fluctuations in business cycle. It rises when the economy weakens and firms lay off workers in response to lower sales. Okay, so cyclical unemployment is in direct relationship with business cycle. Whenever the health of economy is good, there will be no layoffs. Okay, but whenever the economy weakens, there will be layoffs. So these layoffs, these types of unemployment will be called cyclical unemployment. The second group is seasonal. It's self-explanatory. Happens in industries that operate only during part of the year. Like what? Like farm markets, like farmers. Okay? These are called seasonal unemployment. The third group is frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment is a result of normal labor turnover. Okay? People got fired because they haven't had great performance. Okay? So a firm can fire a person. This is because of the frictional. So this is normal thing. This happens because of the friction of that firm and that individual. So frictional unemployment is result of normal labor turnover resulting from people entering and leaving the workforce. Even in the best of economic times, people are looking for work because they have finished school, quit, been fired, and etc. And the last type of unemployment is structural unemployment. Structural occurs when workers are unable to find work, okay, or fill available jobs because they lack the necessary skill, or don't live nearby the workplace, or decide not to work with this wage, okay, with the wage offered by the market. These are called structural. So the foundation is not right here in the 4th group of unemployment. There's a point here. Structural unemployment is closely tied to changes in technology, international competition, and government policy. Okay? Structural unemployment typically lasts longer than those 3 other unemployments because workers must retrain or possibly relocate to find a job. They need to increase their skill. They need to change the location of their living to find the job. The foundation is not, it is structurally not a good fit for that company. Awesome. We've learned all 4 types of unemployment. What type of questions you may get from this slide? Let's get to it. Which type of unemployment is caused by changes in technology, international competition, and government policies? Cyclical, seasonal, frictional, and structural. This is easy peasy question, and the right answer is D, as we said, structurally, foundationally, individual and firm does not fit. Awesome. Let's get to the next slide. The beautiful interest rate. Okay, we talked about this interest rate. Like, we mentioned the term interest rate a lot, but what is this interest rate? Let's say you go to a bank, you want some loan, okay? You're a great person. Will bank give the money for free to you? No. Bank is looking for money. Okay? Bank will charge something to provide the money for you. The amount that bank will charge depends on interest rate. So, in simple terms, interest rate is a financial variable that shows the cost of borrowing money or the return on lending money. So, if you put your money in savings account, bank will give you, for example, 2-3% interest rate. You are getting return when you're lending money to bank. But if you, on the other hand, if you get loan from bank, you're borrowing some money. So that borrowing will cost you. So interest rate applies on both. It shows both the cost of borrowing and the return on lending money. Now, different factors have different effect to interest rate. What factors increase the interest rate or cause the enhancement in the interest rate of a country? What factors affect it? Number 1, when demand is higher than supply. Okay? When demand is high, it means people have money on their hand. Okay? People have money on their hand. And now, if bank does not increase the interest rate, it will cause that extra money on people's hand will cause inflation. So bank increase the interest rate, okay? It makes the Bank of Canada increase the interest rate. It makes the situation harder for people to borrow the money, okay? When interest rate goes up, you need to pay, bank charge you every month, okay? That charge amount will increase. So it is harder for individual to borrow money from bank. So spendings now will decrease. So higher demand will lead to increase in interest rate. The next factor is inflation rate. Higher demand causes inflation. When inflation rate is increasing, interest rate should be increased because it should gather all the Bank of Canada should gather all the money from this society, from the market. Okay?
And remember, we knew that inflation rate and interest rate has direct relationship with each other. Whenever each of them like increase, the other party increases as well. The third factor is foreign exchange rate. When foreign exchange rate has been increased, it means that the CAD value has been decreased. So our CAD now is not like foreign investors are not interested on our CAD now because it has the value has been weakened. They want to take their money out of the country. So Bank of Canada increases the interest rate and says, hey, do not take your money out. I'm gonna give you high return for your money. So Bank of Canada increase the interest rate, and foreign investors keep the money there because they are getting more interest rate from Bank of Canada, from different banks now. Fourth factor is default risk. Remember, the more powerful the country is, the less default risk that country has. Okay? When default risk of a company, a government, a country is high, it means that country, that firm need to give higher interest rate to those who are interested in that country or interested to buy securities or bonds of that firm. So when default risk is high, interest rate will go up. And central bank credibility of a country, when central bank credibility is low, it means default risk is high. When default risk is high, it means interest rate is higher. Awesome. Now we know the concept of interest rate and the factors that affect the interest rate. So rising interest rate, decreasing the growth because consumers spend less and business sales decreases. This is the general effect of rising interest rate on economy. This was a very good slide. I'm feeling really good. Feel free to watch not only this slide, all the slides of this chapter again, because there are a lot to absorb, and most of them are conceptual. You don't need to memorize anything. These are conceptual, and with decrease and increasing one factor, the other factor automatically decrease or increase. If you absorb them right, you don't need to memorize anything. Let's get to the question. What type of question you may get from interest rate? What is the impact of an increase in the supply of capital on interest rate? What a good question. I love this question. A, it raises interest rates. B, it lowers the interest rate. C, it has no impact on interest rate. And D, it increases the demand for borrowing. The right answer is B. But why B? So, we're increasing the supply of capital. Okay? What does that mean? It means we are asking people, hey, come to bank and borrow money from me. I will give you lower interest rate. Okay, so interest rate will be decreased. I will give you low interest rate. Okay, and I'm supplying money. Go out there, buy a car, buy a house. Because why? Because I want to activate my economy. The economy need to get its health back. So supplying money leads to decreasing in interest rate and starting the growth of the economy. We talked about the interest rate, and we need to talk about inflation now, because inflation and interest rates are buddies. They have direct relationship with each other. What is inflation? In simple words, in simple terms, inflation happens when prices are rising. I'm recording this video in July 2023. We all know that inflation is killing people. Like, price of grocery are a lot higher than the past 2 years. This is inflation. Okay, this is problematic. Why? Because as prices rise, okay, our money, our CAD value money, our money begins to lose the value. So more and more money is required to buy something. Okay, if you used to buy, I don't know, if you used to buy a bag of chips for $4, you need to pay $8. Okay, so with $4 now we can buy a lower bag of chips. So the power of our money has been decreased. This is, in simple terms, this is inflation. Awesome. But how do we hear a lot that, hey, the inflation rate is 6.8%, or the inflation rate has been increased. How do they measure or calculate the inflation? With a term called CPI, Consumer Price Index. What's that CPI? CPI is an indicator of inflation, and it is considered a measure of the cost of living. Okay, Statistics Canada, who calls every day to fill a form or for surveys, Statistics Canada tracks the retail price of a shopping basket of 600 goods and services. Okay, so Statistics Canada consider a big basket. Okay, there are 600 goods and services that a typical Canadian would use every year, every month. Okay, groceries, I don't know, internet bills, mobile bills, gas, all of these items are in that basket. Okay, now that basket has a price. For example, we are in 2023. Price of that basket in 2023 is different from price of that basket in 2022 or 21. Okay? To measure the inflation, okay, if I want to measure the inflation of this year, I do have CPI, okay, CPI of this year, basket price of this year, minus basket price of the last year, CPI of last year, over to or divided by CPI of last year. This is the way to measure inflation rate. Now, so this formula is very important. Please, you need to absorb it, so please fully understand what CPA means. Now, there is a term called output gap. What is output gap? It is real GDP minus potential GDP. Okay? Real GDP is, we calculate GDP every year. We know the health of the economy, okay? We have that expenditure approach, C plus I plus G plus X minus M. They calculate GDP that way, okay? But potential GDP is like if we don't use our sources or resources, the GDP will decrease. But if we use all resources, the potential GDP will, like, we have some potential to get to that high GDP, but we haven't used it. This is potential GDP. Now, why do we talk about this output gap? Because it is one of the causes of inflation. So there are three causes of inflation. Number one, negative output gap. What does that mean? That means potential GDP is greater than real GDP. Okay? Economy can produce more output because its resources are not being used to its full capacity. So one of the causes of inflation is negative output gap. And surprisingly, the second cause of inflation is positive output gap. Okay? Or demand pull inflation. The other name is demand pull inflation. Economy, here in positive output gap, economy is trying to produce more than it can with existing resources. This also causes inflation. And the third cause of inflation is cost push inflation. What's cost push inflation? Happens when faced with higher cost of production. Okay, so a corporation, a firm, a manufacturer is producing something. Okay, the raw materials of produce that something, the price of that raw material has been increased. So this corporation or firm need to increase the price of that item. This is called cost push inflation. Because of the increase in the raw material, the price of raw material, now the cost of item has been increased. So cost push inflation. This is called cost push inflation. What type of question you may get from this topic? What is the output gap? A, the difference between real GDP and potential GDP. B, the difference between the growth rate of money and inflation. C, the difference between the CPI in the current period and a previous one. And D, the difference between the retail price of a shopping basket and the price of individual goods and services. As we talked about it, output gap is real GDP minus potential GDP. So the right answer is A. Let's get to the next slide. There are two terms related to inflation: disinflation and deflation. Deflation. Okay? What is disinflation? Disinflation is a decline in the rate at which prices rise. So, prices are still rising, but in a lower rate. Okay? This is called disinflation. But deflation, on the other hand, is a sustained fall in prices where the annual change in the CPI is negative year after year. In fact, deflation, oh my God, I'm getting it wrong all the time. Deflation is opposite of inflation. Inflation means CPI of current year is more than CPI of last year. Deflation means CPI of this year, current year, is less than CPI of last year. So the prices are falling. Have we seen deflation in Canada? I haven't seen them yet. And do you think deflation is always good, like falling in prices? No. But why? When prices fall, it means business profits fall. Businesses are getting less money for the item. So they will lay off workers. They will be like, okay, I'm not profiting enough. Why am I having, 100 employees? Let me lay off 25 of them. So when prices fall, business profits fall. They lay off workers. It means unemployment rises. When unemployment rises, economic growth slows. Businesses have less employees, produce more. When economic growth slows, recession happens. Wow, from deflation, we got to recession. Can you believe it? So that's why Bank of Canada, the primary goal of Bank of Canada is maintaining the inflation rate on 2%. The deflation is not favorable in any country. As I said, deflation finally may cause recession. Also, we got covered two terms, disinflation and deflation. Let's get to the question. How does deflation affect the economy? A, it encourages borrowing and investment. B, it discourages borrowings and investment. C, it has no effect on borrowing and investments. D, it depends on the overall state of the economy. The right answer is B. As we talked about it, deflation is not sometimes good. It discourages borrowing and investments. Let me read the text on the right side. Falling prices eventually leads to a decline in corporate profits. As prices continue to fall, businesses must sell their products at lower and lower prices. Businesses cut back on production costs and wage rates. And if conditions worsen, they will lay off workers. For the economy as a whole, unemployment rate rises, economic growth slows, and consumers shift their focus from spending to saving. Ultimately, declining company profits will negatively impact stock prices. This is very important. I feel like you will get a question from deflation. Great, let's get to the next slide. Nominal versus real. Okay? You know why every employer in Canada increase the wage of their employees at least like 2-3%? Because they want to match with inflation. Okay? Because they want to preserve the income power of their employees. That's where the term nominal and real comes in. So, real GDP, okay, equals to nominal GDP, the GDP that we calculate from those three approaches, minus inflation rate. If you want to know that the health of the country's economy is good, you need to consider real GDP, okay? If nominal GDP is 3%, let's say 3%, but inflation rate is 5%, okay, your economy is shrinking because real GDP is minus 2%. You're not gonna lie to the people, okay? You can report that, hey, my GDP is 3%, but no, that's nominal GDP. You need to consider inflation rate. The prices are going up. And again, real interest rate equals nominal interest rate minus inflation rate. Okay, let's say a bank, okay, is advertising, hey, people, come and get 4% interest rate on your savings. 4%. Banks usually do 1.5, 2%. Okay. Get 4% interest rate. On the other hand, inflation rate in the society, in the country, is 6%. Okay. So in this scenario, not only you as a client who invest in that 4%, not only you're profiting, your money is losing its power because the real interest rate in this scenario is minus 2%. So your money at the end of the year will lose 2% of its power. That's why real interest rate and real GDP need to be differentiated from nominal GDP and nominal interest rate. We need to consider that important factor of inflation rate. Let's get to the question. When might negative interest rate occur? A, when inflation rates are high. B, when the nominal interest rate is at 0 or near 0. C, when the economy is experiencing growth. Or D, when the central bank wants to discourage lending. And the right answer is B. So when the nominal interest rate is at 0 or near 0 with a 2% inflation, even with a 2% inflation rate, which is a minimum in any country nowadays, the real interest rate may be negative. Awesome. Let's get to the next slide. This chapter is really super important. Like every slide that I move forward, like go and see, I see lots of new terms and all of them are important. I can't ignore them. We are now at monetary and fiscal policies. What are monetary policy and fiscal policy? Let's talk about monetary policy. Monetary policy is government's weapon to maintain the CAD value, Canadian dollar value, which is executed by central bank via playing with two factors, money supply and interest rate. So, Central Bank of Canada, on behalf of government, play around with money supply, play around with interest rate to maintain the CAD value. This is called monetary policy. On the other hand, the fiscal policy is government's second weapon to control inflation and again CAD value via playing with another two factors, government spending and taxation. So, money supply and interest rate are under monetary policy, and government spending and taxation are in fiscal policy. Now, the government has two approaches, okay? Anytime government has two approaches, expansionary approach or contractionary approach. What does expansionary approach? Okay, expansionary approach means government will increase money supply and decrease interest rate. This is called expansionary approach. On the other hand, contractionary approach is decreasing money supply and increasing interest rate. Okay? But what strategies does the government use for expansion, to expand the economy? What strategies does government use? as I said, they play with bank rate. So Bank of Canada decreases the overnight rate. What's that overnight rate? So when we are sleeping at night, banks, they talk to each other on the back end, okay? And they borrow money from each other. They borrow it from, like, at what rate? At overnight rate. So when Bank of Canada decrease the overnight rate, means the cost of borrowing for banks from each other is now lower. Now they can give it to the clients, to their consumers with a lower rate. Okay, so it means that the supply of money is increasing. The second strategy of, like, expansionary strategy is open market operation. What's open market operation? Bank of Canada buys bond. Okay, Bank of Canada buys bond from from other banks. Okay, from 6 big banks, for example. Now, those 6 big banks have money on their hand because Government of Canada bought money at a very low, bought bond from them at a very low rate. They have money, they give it to their customers. So, whenever Bank of Canada buys bond, it means they are doing expansionary. It is part of expansionary approach. The third strategy of expansionary is redeposits. What does that mean? Bank of Canada has accounts in all big banks of, like, in RBC, CIBC, TD, Scotia. Bank of Canada has an account in all of the banks, okay? And in itself, in its reserve also in the Bank of Canada. What redeposits mean? Bank of Canada transfer funds from its accounts to those big banks. That way, those big banks will have money on their hand. They will give it to customers. So supply of money will increase. They will give it to customers, and it will expand the economy. They will give it to customers at a lower rate, and customers will be interested on borrowing some money at a lower rate. They will go buy a car, buy a house, whatever they want to do. So these are called expansionary strategies. On the other hand, contractionary strategies. In the contractionary strategy, government wants to tighten the society and market, okay? Wants to get all the money out. The supply of money will decrease. The interest, they rise the interest rate up. So 3 strategies of contractionary. 3 contractionary strategies. Bank of Canada increases the overnight rate, the rate that banks borrow money from each other. Bank of Canada increased that rate, so it's now harder to borrow money. For the open market operation, Bank of Canada sells bonds now. Okay, Bank of Canada sells bonds. And strategy number 3 is drawdowns. What does drawdown mean? Bank of Canada transfer funds from from its accounts on those big banks to its Federal Reserve. So there is no money to, like, give it to their customers. Like, all big banks will be like, okay, we don't have money. Let's rise the interest rate so less people are interested in borrowing money. So now we learned the expansionary strategies and contractionary strategies. Awesome. Let's get to the question. What are open market operations? A. the buying or selling of bonds in the market to control the national money supply. B, the lending of money on a short-term basis to financial institutions. C, the administration of interest rates by financial institutions. And D, the strategy of controlling the demand for credit by raising the cost of credit. As we talked about it, open for the expansionary strategies, Bank of Canada buys bond as an open market operation, and for the contractionary strategy, Bank of Canada sells bond under open market operation. So the right answer is A. By the way, that contractionary strategy, the open market operation of contractionary strategies, when we say Bank of Canada sells bonds, it means, what does that mean? It means Bank of Canada, okay, sell bonds at a lower rate. Okay, so for example, rates out there are 5% now. The bonds, I will talk about bonds in the future slides, like in the future chapters, but bonds are securities that issuer will give interest rate based on that rate, okay? Let's say in the market, the bonds rate is 5%. Bank of Canada, okay, will sell bonds to financial institutions, okay? The price of the interest rate of that bonds are more than the market. For example, 7%. Now, financial institutions are interested in Bank of Canada's bonds. They want invest in the bonds of other entities. They are interested in the higher rate. So the other bank's money supply will be less because they have invested it in a Bank of Canada's bonds. That's why the contraction happens in the society. Let's get to the next slide. Balance of payment, or BOP. What's BOP? BOP is detailed statement of a country's economic transactions with the rest of the world. Okay, it's a big picture. What's that, like Canada's transactions in the world? Okay, it's important. Why it's important? It's important because it gives us an idea of supply and demand of foreign currency and CAD. That's a fairly good part. BOP formula. BOP equals to current account plus financial account plus capital account. As its name indicates, balance of payment. When BOP is 0, it means everything in the country is okay. When BOP is negative, it means country is in deficit. When BOP is positive, it means country is in surplus. Country has extra money on hand. Country is now powerful. They can give loan to other countries. So BOP is super important. But what's include in current account? How to calculate current account of a country? Current account equals to amount of exports minus amount of imports plus salaries and investment profits coming in minus salaries and investment profits going out plus amounts of donations and aids going out. This is the formula for current account. For financial account, how to calculate financial account? Canadians' ownership of foreign assets minus foreigners' ownership of Canadian assets. This is a way to calculate financial account. And at the last, capital account. Capital account equals to foreigners' investments minus Canadians' investments plus loans foreigners give to Canada minus loans Canada gives to foreigners. Before you start getting worried about this bunch of formula here, these formula is not important. I just mentioned them here to give you an idea of how to calculate current account, financial account, and capital account. Just learn the concept here that BOP equals to those three terms, and when BOP is minus, it means deficit. When it's positive, it means surplus. So just learn the concept of BOP. Do not care about those formulas here. Let's get to the question. What type of question you may get from BOP? Which component of balance of payments, or BOP, records financial flows related to investments by foreigners in Canada and investments by Canadians abroad? A, current account. B, financial account. C, capital account. And D, none of the above. And the right answer is D. No, just kidding. It's C. It's C because you can see the formula of current account. Capital account. Just try to. I don't think you may get this type of question, but it's not a bad idea to have in back of your mind that current, like, capital account includes the foreigners' investments, just one term, okay? The financial account includes the ownership, learn that one term here. And the current account includes exports, imports, donations, salaries. Just try to learn it and memorize it with just one word. Awesome. Let's get to the next slide. Great. I do have 4 challenges for you. This is interesting. So we have learned different terms related to economy in Canada. Now I do have 4 questions. 4 questions that I think you're gonna get at least 3 of the almost same questions on your final test. Okay, so take it seriously. Try to answer it yourself first, and we're gonna go through the answer together. Challenge number 1: an increase in which variable directly contributes to growth in GDP? Capital stock. B, government debt. C, interest rate. D, equity market. This is very, very hard questions. A hard question. I have extracted it from exactly from a part of the book. And the right answer is capital stock. A. Okay? Just read that text. I have copied it from the textbook. I haven't mentioned that this in the slides. That's why I wanted to have it in a different, separate challenge. So, growth in GDP results from a variety of factors. Among the more important are increase in population over time. Okay? Even if the output of every worker remain constant, GDP would rise. When there are lots of people to work, businesses will sell more, there are more production, so growth in GDP will be higher. Second factor, increase in the capital stock. Okay? As more workers are provided with additional equipment, and as their skills have been improved with better training and education, individual productivity rises. Okay? And you can read the rest yourself. This is the most important point to get. So by increasing capital stock, so the term capital stock is defined here. When as more workers are provided with additional equipment and when skills are higher, they have been better trained and educations are higher, then productivity rises. By capital stock, the term capital stock is defined here. So it hasn't been mentioned in the slides, I know, but you're learning it now. Okay, so remember what capital stock is. And the increase in capital stock is increasing the GDP. Great, let's get to the next challenge. Challenge number 2, interesting question. Which action taken by the Bank of Canada would be an expansionary monetary policy? Oh my God. Policy. A, raising the overnight rate. B, selling bonds. C, performing a redeposits. And D, making a drawdown. So, what were those expansionary strategies? BOC buys a bond. BOC perform redeposits. When perform what does perform redeposits mean? It means from its account in Federal Reserve, it transfers money to the 6 big banks or other banks that the government has account in. So those banks have money now, they can give it to people and start the growth in the economy. So performing a redeposit is an expansionary monetary policy. Let's get to the next challenge. Challenge number 3. What are examples of lagging economic indicators? Remember lagging? We had leading, coincidence, and lagging. You need to memorize all the factors, all the examples in that slide. Okay, what are the examples of lagging economic indicators? A, average hours worked per week and the money supply. B, GDP and personal income. C, industrial production and retail sales. And D, private sector plant and equipment spending and unemployment. And as you may know, the right answer is D. As I said before, try to remember and memorize all those examples of leading, coincidence, and lagging economic indicators. You are definitely, I guarantee you definitely will get questioned from that slide. Not only that slide, all the slides were important, but you're gonna definitely get questioned from that economic indicators. Let's get to the last slide and last challenge. Challenge number 4 and last slide. Wow, we've come so far. Good, you did a great job. Let's get to the last challenge. How does an increase in the inflation rate affect investment returns? A, the real return would be reduced. B, the nominal return would be increased. C, the nominal return would be increased. And D, the real return would be unaffected. Definitely not D. So, when inflation rate, we mentioned that when if you wanna have a better sense of GDP, interest rate, investment return, you need to consider inflation rate. It gives you a real thing, a real scenario now, because you are considering the rising prices, okay? When inflation increase, it means you're getting less return. Your real return would be decreased. So the right answer would be A. The real return would be reduced. It does not affect nominal return because nominal return is a like plain return you get on paper. It does not include inflation. Real GDP, real return, real interest rate equals nominal of these minus inflation rate. Awesome. Like, I'm proud of you. I am proud of you. This was very long chapter. I am sorry for that, but we needed to absorb all the required information, and we did it. You did it. You did a great job. And yeah, we finished chapter 3. Unbelievable. We just started and now finished chapter 3. I will see you in chapter 4. So take care of yourself.